Hello, companions!
Hello, companions. Welcome. I hope everyone's had a really decent start to 2024. We're a couple of days in at this point. And I know, I'm sure you're wondering, just where is Lawrence? Well, we decided to give him this stream off. So instead, I'd like to introduce you to my co-host for the evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you happen to be, John Billingsley. Hi, John.
Woohoo! Howdy, a co-host. Holy cow, I've risen to the very heights in Hollywood.
How are you doing, John?
Wonderful, thank you. How are you doing?
Wonderful. You were such a big hit with everyone on our Thanksgiving special. So we're delighted to have you back with us this time.
I'll try not to wear out my welcome on a second visit.
Oh no, you couldn't, I promise.
Oh, I could.
But this time you've brought some friends with you. So I'm going to, without further ado, introduce everybody else that we have here. So please welcome Armin Shimerman, Kitty Swink, and Juan Carlos Coto.
Hello.
Hello.
John, how do you know all of these lovely people?
We were all in prison together, oddly enough. A little escapade that went awry, and we saw some serious time. We bonded a bit. Of course, Kitty was in a women's facility, so we didn't get a lot of time with her. But
we got conjugal visits.
I was just going to talk about conjugal visits.
Yeah. Those are good times in the yard. We had some good times in the yard.
Of course, Frakes, he skated from the whole thing. I mean, he has a remarkable capacity to avoid ramifications for his actions, is all I can say.
Wow.
He paid off.
Or alternatively, if you would prefer something more straightforward, we are all in the sci-fi world, and of course, our paths have crossed on multiple occasions, and we've gotten to know each other a lot more through our work with PanCan, which I know we'll talk about.
Absolutely.
I prefer the former answer.
I can agree with that.
I'm afraid people are actually now Googling prison time. Shimerman did prison time. How come I can't find that? Where is that? That was a lie.
It was a small prison.
This is a prison of the mind.
Imagination.
Star Trek Season 1, Episode 9, A Prison of the Mind.
That sounds very accurate. Well, thank you all for being with us here today. And we are here to get the word out about PanCan and how folks can support. And I definitely want to ask all of you your whys and your hows. But before that, I'd like to have everyone out there get to know you a little better. So I've prepared some questions. And even before that, anyone that's that's watching our live stream right now, if you have any questions for our guests, please drop them in the comments. We will try to answer them towards the end of the event, time allowing. And also,
that's not really going to happen, is
it? We'll see what happens. Also, just like normal, we will be hosting a social hour after this. So if anybody out there wants to come to our social hour, we'll drop the link toward the end for anybody that would like to join. But without further ado, let's get into it. I called this first part kind of Renaissance people, and there's a reason for that. And I'm going to get around to everybody, and I have some specific questions for each of you with this. But everyone here, to me, feels like a Renaissance person. John, you're dedicated to numerous charitable and social causes, two of which we'll actually kind of talk about today. Armin, you've directed, you've taught, you're a published author. Kitty, you've had your share of producing and directing. And Juan Carlos, you're a showrunner, a producer. You've directed and written on many iconic TV shows. And I'm sorry if I didn't hit everything, because I'm sure there's more. But I can imagine throughout your careers, it's been important to keep things fresh, to reinvent. And also just hearing you all talk the other day, you just seem to have a thirst for knowledge and experiences. So can you talk a little bit about that evolution? Was there a catalyst or direction for the direction that you took, or maybe a person? What kind of turned you into these multi-hyphenates?
Well, if I might go first, for me, it was boredom.
Because you've been married to me for 42 years.
Prison of the mind.
When you make your livelihood from acting, there's a lot of downtime. And so you have to put your energies and your attentions into other things while you wait in the trailer for Juan Carlos or someone to call you to the set. And so I wanted to write. In fact, I wanted to be a writer long before I wanted to be an actor. And so that became important to me. Also, I was an English major at college where I studied Shakespeare. And so Shakespeare became an important part of my life. In fact, the books that you see behind me are a small part of my Shakespearean life. And so all those things intrigued me. I'm interested in knowing more about the world. I'm getting to the point now in life where there's so many things I don't know, and there's very little time to try to study, but I'm trying to do that as fast as I can.
Wonderful. Who would like to go next? Kitty?
Kitty should go next. She's in the same frame.
Okay, all right. So I've always been that person who goes, "Oh, look," and gets distracted. So I became a labor activist because we were at a union meeting probably 40 years ago, and I didn't like an explanation I heard from one of the board members, and so I ran for the board, and then I eventually became a vice president of the Screen Actors Guild. I was a trustee for a long time. Because I was a member of the Antias Theater Company, and I was good at raising money, all of a sudden I found myself on the board, and then pretty soon I found myself an associate artistic director, and then I became the artistic director. I like to teach because I like to share my knowledge. I usually teach Shaw, and where he teaches Shakespeare, I teach Shaw, Oscar Wilde, those kind of playwrights. I just like
lesser playwrights, lesser.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen.
Shaw will meet you in hell where
Yeah.
you
It's just, oh, look, it's a pretty thing. And I became involved with PanCan because it was important to me through my friend Charlotte Ray. So who we lost to pancreatic cancer, but she did very well. She made it for about 10 years, well into her 90s. So there we go.
For those of you who don't know Charlotte Ray, she was the lead in a show called Facts of Life.
Yeah. And a Broadway diva.
A Broadway diva.
Yeah.
A legend.
A legend.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, literally. Yeah.
And a great lady.
Juan Carlos, what about you?
Look, for me, it was two things. Growing up in a Cuban American family where, everyone had been exiled from their country, so there was all these stories of this place that I had never been to. So stories kind of surrounded me from my childhood. But the biggest influence is Manny, who we're going to talk about today. I lost him in July, and I started out as a PA on his Super 8 films. So he was the one who sort of grabbed the camera from my dad and started making his own short films. And from that, I started making films, instead of book reports, because it was a good way to get around it. And sort of just got the bug from him. So storytelling and curiosity really was the main thing that I sort of got from Manny. He was curious about everything. And that, I sort of learned that. And so that's really, I think, what an artist is, right? Is we're just reporters. We're just listening and observing and then reporting it in some form.
I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
John, how about you?
Well, since you pointed to one thing that I'm interested in, I'll talk about it. And yes,
you can talk about other things for sure.
Well, I mean, I was a theater actor for many years. I had a theater company. I started an acting school way back when. But also during those years, I was poor. And the reality is, if you're a theater actor, you're going to be poor in all likelihood. And up until the age of 38, I didn't have a pot to piss in. One of the reasons I came here was to pursue film and TV out of necessity. But I've never forgotten what it was like to be poor. I had parents. I was on a side of a line that gave me a sense of security because I knew I could count on them in a pinch. But I was on food stamps, unemployment insurance. I made under 15 grand a year for many, many years. I never had money in the bank. I always had to worry about the next rent check. I always thought about where I could get a cadge or free meal from a chum. So for me, knowing that so much of life is fortuity and chance, that you could, through no fault of your own, find yourself in desperate need, has always animated me to want to take advantage of the luck I've had to try and give back. And that has been a big part of my life for many years, particularly after I moved here and had enough, good fortune to actually be able to spend a good chunk of my time involving myself in social service organizations.
And if I may add 2 cents to what John just said, I think that's why a lot of people like ourselves do the things that we do, is that we've been fortunate in certain ways, in certain pathways, and we have a great desire to give back because we know that how much
sure.
humanity
Yeah.
suffers and has not been necessarily as lucky as we have been.
And I suspect all of us were raised with that ethic. My mother made it very clear to me as a child that you can't walk past somebody in need and not try and help. And I think that stuck with me my whole life.
I think I responded the way I responded in spite of my parents. God bless them. I now that they're both dead, I can insult them freely. I love them to death, but they weren't particularly animated by the desire to get in there and help the indigent. I think in part I was always sort of like, guys, shouldn't you be doing more? Come on. Yeah, I kept
Wonderful.
beat me, but yeah.
Oh, well, we're going to keep talking about that or
They
different
wouldn't
things.
beat me. They wouldn't beat me. They loved the hell out of me. They weren't particularly charitable as much as I adored them.
There
They
you
were
go.
depression kids,
Yeah.
My mom and dad, particularly my mom. I mean, she opened her wallet and the moths would fly out. God bless her.
Mm-hmm.
Mine too. I was a single parent family. So, all the things that you talked about in your early years, my mother had all of her life.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
My parents both told stories about their mothers feeding people during the Depression off the back porch. They would mark people's back fences. People would come up and knock on the door because they knew which houses people would feed you from.
Right.
They had gardens and they fed people. And I think that was where it started with my family. And my grandfather, my father's father was a mortician and he owned a mortuary and he kept everybody working. And if people couldn't pay for a funeral, they would bring a chicken or they would, whatever it was. And then he kept his whole staff working. Maybe they'd work 3 days a week, but they all continue to work.
My father was a mortician assistant. So he,
really?
yes, he was the first jobs he had. So he got some of those chickens.
My father was a physician. So, but they came from Cuba and had nothing and, benefited from charity a lot. My mom told the story once of they just didn't have plates to eat on, right? And it wasn't like now you go out and get a stack of paper plates, right? It was the early 60s. And at one point on their doorstep, someone had left all of their china, just like a whole china set, for them to use.
Yeah.
Just like, not fine china, but just plates and forks and you know what I mean?
Well, we've all lived
people watched out for each other,
I mean, I should speak for other people, but I remember living in New York, and you'd wander around. It's like, oh, here's a chair. Oh, here's a
We have one in our kitchen. Our kitchen table is exactly that.
I got a kitchen table home 3 blocks, and I don't know how I got it up 2 flights of stairs, but I did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've repainted it 6 or 7 times.
I knew
already.
that's why he liked me, because he helped me strip it and paint it. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you'd pay somebody $5 to help you carry a sofa, like 5 blocks.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let me circle back around to some of this. So, Armin, you talked about Shakespeare. You're a scholar. You teach it. You've written books using Shakespeare and also Elizabethan settings. What? And I know you talked about in college studying. So, what drew you so much specifically to Shakespeare?
The language was fascinating to me. I had a very influential high school teacher who early on cast me in Hamlet. I didn't play Hamlet. I played the king, Claudius. And I was just so taken with that language. It took me to a different world. And as I said early on, I wanted to be a writer. So I was intrigued by how this man wrote. And I've been following that path forever.
And David Rhodes?
And David Rhodes, who was my longtime university teacher of Shakespeare, who instilled in me a great love for the bard, a great love for language, a great love for theatricality. This may not be the right time, but David, and I'll keep this as a secret, and you can ask me later, or somebody in the chat can ask me later.
Okay.
David Rhodes is actually very much responsible for Patrick Stewart playing Picard. Later, more on that later.
Okay.
Wow.
Absolutely. I noticed when I was looking into to you and Shakespeare that you are moderating a class on Shakespeare's rhetoric coming up soon through the Antaeus Theater Company, and that sounds like it's beyond just it's not an acting class. What concepts or history or ideas do you cover in classes like that?
Rhetoric. I cover rhetoric. It is an acting
Thank you.
class. It is an acting class. I show actors how they can use the principles of rhetoric, which were essential for Shakespeare's writing. As I said, I've been studying the man's writing.
Mhm.
Why did he write the way he did? For many, many reasons. But the basic principles were Elizabethan rhetoric, which was taught to everyone at that time. Everyone used rhetoric, were taught rhetoric, were instilled in rhetoric up until about the turn of the 20th century. And so I teach actors what the principles of rhetoric are, and then all of a sudden their performances become clearer. Audiences understand what it is that they're saying. Oftentimes we go to a Shakespeare show and we don't have the faintest idea what the actors are saying. They're saying we think English, but we're not quite sure.
Right.
And the reason is because they have no idea about what rhetoric is about. And it's a little like going to see a French farce and you don't speak French. You get the gist of it,
That's
but you're not
fascinating.
understanding the language. But if you understand rhetoric and the principles of rhetoric and you instill that into your acting techniques, your performance is actually much clearer.
Wow. Keeping with that Enteus Theater Company, I know, Kitty, you mentioned this as well. You were an artistic director or associate artistic or something.
I was the associate artistic director, and then I became artistic director. Yeah.
Got it. So I think when a lot of folks, they sit down into the seat in the audience of a play, or kind of like when they watch a show or film, they don't really realize what all goes into making that performance happen. As an artistic director for a theater company, what take us through kind of what decisions, guidance that you were responsible for in that role? Kind of give us a little behind the scenes of a theater company.
And
everything. The answer is everything.
Everything, yeah. But
sort of. I mean, there's staff. We have still because we're still company members. A wonderful executive director who runs the business side, and the staff is great. But the artistic directors choose the season. They help cast the plays. They work with the directors to pick the designers. They pick the directors. I sit and give notes. I mean, I can't tell you what a pleasure it is when you don't have a lot of notes to give, and often you show up at a designer run through before the set shows up on stage, and the designers have one last thing, and you give a lot of notes, and then you go into previews. You're giving a ton of notes. We also had an academy, which Armin is going to teach this class for, so that was important. We had a playwrights lab, so I was very active with the playwrights lab. I got to know all these exciting new playwrights coming up. It was a lot. It's a 65-hour-a-week job. Yeah. Ooh. And really, truthfully, in the American theater, the biggest thing an artistic director has to do is meet with the people who donate money, because it's the beautiful invalid, and it needs a lot of help. Yeah.
One of the things she didn't mention that she has to do is explain to the company members why they didn't get cast.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
yeah.
Yeah.
And in the world that we live in now, we worked really hard at equity, diversity, and inclusion. That was a huge issue for us. Yeah.
Wonderful. That kind of segues me into a question for Juan Carlos, which is, in researching you, I realized just how many titles that you've had, how many shows you've been a part of.
Right.
For the sake of everyone out there, we throw around the term showrunner here at the Companion quite a bit. I was telling you a little bit earlier, we deal a great deal with Stargate, and Brad Wright works with us very closely.
Yeah.
Can you give us just a quick lesson about producing versus directing versus writing versus showrunning? Showrunner is not a credited, like, you don't see showrunner in the credits.
Right.
So take us.
I mean, showrunner is really about being the last word. And when I say that, I don't mean it from like a place of power or arrogance. It's about sort of being the soul of the show, but being smart enough to realize that you're surrounding yourself, like an artistic director, with a bunch of people who are passionate about the same thing, and that the best idea has to win. It's like orchestra conductor is always the metaphor that we use, right? there's a big orchestra, you have the baton, but you have to make sure that everybody gets heard, because often a lot of people have a better idea than you do, right? The other thing is it's a slipstream, right? It's that we use on 911 as our mascot. We use the there's a great GIF of it's from Aardman from the what's the guy, the animated oh my god, the live action, the animated puppets, right? The Chicken Run and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it's a chicken on a train laying the track as the train is speeding down the that's kind of what show running is, right? Writing is the other extreme of that. When you're a writer on a show, right, you're part of the chorus, right? And depending on what level you're at, it's about finding the voice of the show and helping the showrunner execute that, right? And then when you're on set, it's kind of about, for the writer, staying out of the way, right? And I tell you guys have been on sets with writers millions of times, right? And there's the rookie mistake that writers make when they get on the set is they try to control everything. And when I have a young writer starting out like that, I tell them, yeah, you're going to go on the set, and yeah, you're going to be quote unquote my eyes and ears, but it's the director's set. It's not your set, and it's the actor's set. And you need to get out of the way, and you need to know when to get out of the way, right? And give your notes to the director. Don't give your notes to the actor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then directing is, I always talk about directing as a whole nother set of anxiety that's separate from writing, but somehow easier for me personally, because I'm a very social person. And but there's all this anxiety of, is it going to be good, and can I make it good? But I have 150 people actively helping me. I'm not alone in a room, staring at a blank page. Right. So the writing anxiety is a whole kind of different level of anxiety. But all of them have their own, all of the jobs have their own sort of stress level, but it's really about, at the end of the day, figuring out a way to push all that away and get to the core of somebody said, what matters is, what is it? The thing is the thing is the thing. What's that phrase? I don't know. I can't remember, but it's basically, you have to remember what matters in the moment, right? And that can be, it's usually an emotion, right?
Sure.
Either of a character or of a moment, or, so anyway, I think I answered your question.
I think you did. Is there a certain one of those that you gravitate more towards, so like the writing or directing, or do you prefer that kind of solo, or do you prefer the team, that being social in the team?
I'm a social animal, and I like the social aspect of it. It's the reason really I got into TV. I mean, I wrote a bunch of features, none of which were really any good when I started, but I had come from newspapers. I was a reporter at the Miami Herald for 4 years before I moved out here. So a newspaper is very much writing sort of in a group, right? And it's sort of like, oh, how do you spell what? So-and-so. I'm working on a story about this. Can you help me? I'm in the hallway. I'm talking to this guy. You're doing a story about, I need your help with, and all that stuff is what I love about a writing staff, and that's so I prefer the social experience. And I'm smart enough to know I have to close myself in a room and do it sometimes, but I gravitate toward the social aspect of it for sure.
Interesting. Yeah.
Team sport.
I like it. I have kind of a question. This could be for all of you, actually. We've just gone through a writer's strike and an actor's strike.
Mm-hmm.
There was also the writer's strike of 2007 and 2008. And these were obviously very important. They need to happen. We know it was very hard for folks financially, trying to get through that time. But also, how do those strikes affect ongoing productions? I'm sure you all were part of something, one of those times, an ongoing production where things changed. Did things get cut? And then when things were over, it was probably mostly for Juan Carlos, was it hard to get back into the swing of all of that after like a 6 month or more time,
Well, for us, it was better because we finished a season right before the strike. I mean, I literally was giving notes on the finale cut of 911 at midnight on May 1st. I was literally like, and then cut this out and then do the same. I was literally like, I mean, I gave my last notes and then I wasn't allowed to do anything. So we finished the season. So we were able to start up again in a fresh season. However, it's half a season. So for us, the challenge has been, first of all, to ramp up on a pretty big thing. We're doing this Poseidon Adventure thing because at the end of last season, we had our Angela Bassett and Peter Krause get on a cruise ship. So we knew we were going to have to do the Poseidon Adventure. So ramping up the enormity of that was one thing. But then also, we only have a short season. We only have 10 episodes. So kind of, we don't have this thing of 18 episodes where we can arc stuff out. So it's a little tighter. I mean, that's been our challenge. we're blessed to have a show that was sort of working and is now on a new network. So we were able to kind of just start up and ramp up. But there's been some challenges for sure.
My wife was on a show, Chuck, some years back, and this was the
Mhm.
previous writer's strike. And when the writers struck again, was necessary action. The show came back and it lost its audience, and that is, I think, probably one of the fears. Is that, if you're away from a party for too long,
Yeah.
Well, I was on a show at the last strike, and it was killed by the strike. It was called Journeyman. Time travel show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we scrambled to finish our episodes, and we wrote them all, and the director shot them and aired them, and it went to 13 episodes, and people love that show and still talk to me about it when they see it in my credits. And it just didn't come back because I think it was because it was a Fox show produced for NBC, and there was all this stuff going on with money and deals and stuff. But it killed the show.
So it's definitely a risk that we take, that, gigs that we might be involved in, it might be the end of them. But we are all, particularly, I think, at our ages.
But it is important that for everyone to know. Now, Kitty and I were both union officials. She was the vice president, and I was a little lower down in the food chain.
Oh, stop it.
But strikes, whether they're for the actors or the writers or for any union movement, strikes are enormously important.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a strike is not something you do blithely.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of decision to decide to do this, because you're not only going to hurt the members that go on strike, you're going to hurt the people tangential. And that's one of the great tragedies of the recent strikes of the actors and the writers, was there were so many people who had no say in the strike vote, and they suffered. But strikes are important because the membership decides that we can't go on like this, that we're not making a living. What was happening to the writers in writers' rooms was god awful. What was happening to actors was equally as bad. Mm-hmm. It was essential that we tell management we're not going to stand for this anymore. And yes, it was hard. It was very hard. But we got to some extent what we wanted. And we will continue to do that. That's what negotiations are for. Every 3 years we have a new negotiation. All of the unions do. and we will go further. But it's essential to say we're not going any further until this particular issue is put on the board and settled to some degree.
And there were a lot of issues, AI, streaming residuals, all that stuff. But for me, from my point of view, one of the really important things for the actors was that they had not raised the cap. There's a cap on the high money
You're getting
earners.
into the weeds now.
I know, I'm doing it because I can't help myself. They're over which they didn't pay pension and health contributions. And that cap had not gone up in decades. Right. And it was impoverishing our pension and health plan, and fewer people, 27,000 members of Screen Actors Guild had health insurance. That's a terrible thing. And this will help alleviate that. And as I would say when people would ask me, I'm doing this for the people who are coming up behind us. We're okay.
Yeah.
We're all fine. Yeah. It's the people coming up behind us.
It's our last strike. That's what I always told people. It's our last strike. I think.
Let's hope.
But I think so. And it tends to be every 15 years, really. I mean, when you look at it, right?
They'll be wheeling us out of the home. They'll be putting us out there on the streets in our chairs.
On the line.
That's right. That's
right. People in chairs.
If Armin and Kenny can strike, so can you.
You'll be like Captain Pike, John, are you for the strike?
Jackie Joseph, who's 90.
I can't remember if the yes was one beep or two beeps.
Yeah. Jackie Joseph, who's 90, was out there on her walker a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all of that. I wanted to ask, because it is important, and I think a lot of people that are not involved, we spent the whole time, 6 months not exactly knowing what all the reasons and what was going on and what sacrifices people were making. Like you were saying, like, it's not a decision that you take lightly. So I think it's important for everybody to understand that and to hear from you about that.
Strikes are dangerous things for all the reasons that Juan Carlos and John said. They are dangerous, but at the same time, it's something you have to do. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make a living. Right. And that's sort of what's been happening for a while. people who are in all of our professions can no longer make a living, and so they need to find labor in other places.
And I have to say too, yeah. For the writers, it was obviously as well about making a living and the money, but it was also about the profession, right? The profession sort of being devalued and really taken apart, right? Having worked on a streaming show, the show that I was a showrunner on, From Dusk Till Dawn, we did these 10 episode seasons, and the writers' contracts were these 20, sometimes 40-week things, so that when we'd get into production, the writers would be all gone. And at one point, I demanded that we rehire the writers during production so that they could go to set and learn the process and learn how to become writer producers. There's a system in place that's been in place for 50 years. And this is not just nostalgia, because this is the way we always did it, and I love it. It creates better writer producers and better shows, because you learn the entire process, so that when you're writing something on the page, you're writing something that is achievable, right? It's a system that's been in place since radio, really. And all that was going away because of the way these show deals worked, right? And so that's, I think, was for me the most important thing we were fighting for, right? The devaluation of the profession, as it were.
Our business used to be run by people who were in our business. And now the people who you were hearing, like, let's keep them out until they lose their houses, then they'll come to the table. Those people are Wall Street guys. They are not people who do what we do. They don't make film and television for a living. They make money for a living. And
they're not artists.
I'm going to put my co-host hat on, which I didn't think I was going to get to do, but I'm going to. And in the interest of time, I would like to segue us perhaps into talking about PanCan.
Let's do that.
Because we're all very passionate about the union, and we can easily gab for hours.
I can see that very, very easily. Let's do that segue then. And I actually have a little bumper graphic to get us right into it. So
segue bumper graphic. There you go.
So let's talk about PanCan. So PanCan, in my just reading, and I've my very limited experience and knowledge of it, it was the first organization dedicated to fighting pancreatic cancer in what their website said was a comprehensive way. So supporting research, patient services, advocacy, and community. What does that mean? Just what is PanCan?
And PanCan's actual name is Kitty?
The Pancreatic Cancer Action Network.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We abbreviate.
But look, I will say this. You already did a beautiful segue, John, but we were talking about unions, right? PanCan is very much a union of families of people who are suffering with pancreatic cancer, of pancreatic patients, of doctors, of all these people who unite as a union around this horrible disease in an effort to fight it. And I think that that collective power is what makes it amazing, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And we all have our personal stories, which we will all get into, about why we joined and why this is important to us.
And there's another thing about PanCan. They reach out to all the other cancer organizations and help them. They have formed community with all these other, which is allowing strides to be made across the cancer universe. Is there a cancer universe? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Armin, that was going to be my next question. You all have your different reasons for supporting PanCan, acting as ambassadors. So I want to hear your stories. Tell me why.
Well, I will ask that Kitty start, because I believe her story is one of the more important ones.
About 20 years ago, I was losing a lot of weight and I didn't feel very good. We were doing Hamlet and the costumes didn't fit. I had acid reflux, blah, blah, blah. And
it wasn't me. I wasn't the one causing that.
No, he wasn't. It was actually the guy playing Hamlet. There you go. At the end of February, I really didn't feel good. And I was visiting our friend Cecily, who played Moogie on Deep Space Nine, played Armin's mother. And she was dying in the hospital. And I was talking to her, and her childhood nanny was there. And she said, "Don't worry about Cecily. You should worry about yourself." And Armin, I came home and said that to Armin, and Armin said, "Call your doctor. She's right." And my doctor just happened. I called them. They gave me an appointment for about 3 weeks later. And then the next morning, they just happened to say, "Hey, we had a cancellation. You want to come in now?" They did some blood tests. They said it's probably just acid reflux. You're under a lot of pressure for this reason, blah, blah, blah. Over the weekend, my urine turned brown. On Monday, we were at a funeral for a friend of ours' son who had immolated himself in his grandfather's car. And when we got home, there was a message from my doctor saying, you have to go to Cedars right now. Your kidneys and your liver are shutting down. And we went to Cedars. We waited about 3 hours.
And you turned yellow at Cedars?
Yeah. And 17 days later, 2 weeks later and a half, I left Cedars Sinai Hospital without half my stomach, half my pancreas, my gallbladder, 2 feet of my intestines, and 28 lymph nodes.
And why was that? Because you haven't mentioned
Because I had pancreatic cancer. I had stage 2B pancreatic cancer. What I didn't know is my oncologist said to us, don't look up the numbers. You're not a statistic. So I had a 3 to 4% chance of surviving 5 years, which I didn't know until after I was more than 5 years out. And here I am on March 3rd. It'll be my 20th anniversary of having my surgery. And I think it'll be a big party. Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's amazing. And that, you were saying that surgery, that is the, what I've heard
Whipple.
on a Whipple. Yep. I've heard it on a couple of different TV shows, I think. So,
it's a very extensive, when Kitty
sounds
had the operation, I was told it was the second most intense operation that a doctor can perform. I believe a heart-lung was the most intense, and then
Abdominal,
came the Whipple, because it involves going through, because the pancreas is buried in your body. You have to go through many organs to get to the pancreas. So you have to deal with 5 major organs, if not more, and vascular system as well, to get to the pancreas, to see whether or not the pancreas is operable or not, so that they can complete the Whipple. Sometimes they do all the work. They get to the pancreas and they find out, oh, it's in the wrong place. We can't do anything. And they sew you back up.
Jonathan Drake's brother. They opened him up and they shut him back. They closed him back up. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Juan Carlos, could you talk to us about it?
Manny, as I told you, was my inspiration for a lot of my career, and really the reason I have a career in a lot of ways. And Manny was, and the reason he's connected to Trek is he ran Star Trek Enterprise in the last season, was on it for 2 seasons, and was a lifetime Star Trek fan, and sort of gave me the Star Trek bug too as well. But 2 years ago, so this would have been May, and almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, in May of 2022. He started to get really thirsty. He was thirsty all the time, and he couldn't figure it out. He was actually here. My mom was in town, whatever, and he couldn't quench his thirst. He thought it was strange. His wife said, my dad had diabetes. You should check that, because it was one of the symptoms. So he went, and they diagnosed him with diabetes, and he got jaundice as well. But then his doctor was like, I don't know, there might be something else going on here. And they sent him in for a scan, and they found a tumor in the pancreatic duct, in the duct that goes from the pancreas to the liver, and that was blocking things. So he wasn't, his enzymes and et cetera weren't balanced. So that caused sudden onset diabetes, which is one of the big symptoms of pancreatic cancer. And so that started a year-long process of chemo, 2 rounds of chemo, which were debilitating to him, although he wrote through all of that, and he told no one. He told me and some close people.
Oh, you're muted.
Just muted yourself.
You got muted.
Oh, sorry, I don't know what. He told me and didn't share it with the industry because he wanted to keep working. And during all that, he was writing through chemo, which was debilitating, and he was on American Horror Stories and wrote a bunch of stuff, and still stuff is airing now that he wrote. Anyway, he did 2 rounds of chemo, a round of radiation. It was sort of it was all set to do the Whipple, but it took a turn, a few weeks before the surgery, and was not able to have the surgery, and passed away on July 9th at 3:15 in the afternoon of last year from pancreatic cancer. And so it was just this whirlwind year of, him knowing he was going to pass. He left behind a 14-year-old son, a 12-year-old daughter, and twin 9-year-old daughters. And so, he was my lifelong inspiration artistically and in so many ways. And that's why I'm here, because I want to do whatever I can to ease people's suffering with this disease and to find a cure. You know, what's the figure, Armin? We've gone from 4% to 12%.
We've gone from 3%.
You muted.
No,
you unmuted.
We've gone from 3%, which is what Kitty was 18 years ago, to 12%. And a lot of this has to do with the research and funding that PanCan provides.
And
he was there. There's an experimental surgery that he was just, treatment that he was going to start. But again, it progressed too much. So every case is different.
One of the big changes is that we're making doctors understand what are those signs. Being thirsty, having it in your family background. There's a lot of things that they know to tell doctors to look for that people, if you're not with a doctor who knows, there was a wonderful actor, Camden Toy, who Armin worked with on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I had done a couple of readings with, and he passed because he kept going to the doctor and saying, I don't feel good, I don't feel good, I don't feel good, I don't feel good. And nobody would listen to him. And by the time they found the pancreatic cancer, it was too late.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my mother's story. She passed away in 1990, and from diagnosis to death, it was a couple of months. And she had been complaining of various stomach and back issues for a long time. She was averse, always going to the hospital, going to the doctor. And, you know, one of the great, I think, I won't say cultural changes, but I think one of the wonderful things that PanCan has been able to effectuate is this much greater increased awareness, Camden's sad story aside, that one, you should act when you are having symptoms, and two, you should be persistent with your doctor to make sure they understand that there is a possibility, there's something that has to be gotten to the bottom of. And also the increased awareness on the part of the medical community that it's not a death sentence. And I think that's the other part of it is, you know, to a certain extent, which I can intellectually understand 33 years ago when it was discovered that my mother had pancreatic cancer, there was no possibility of doing anything. That was never even bruited. The idea now that there are options and there are possibilities, it's a game changer. And it is certainly in large part due to the work that PanCan has undertaken.
And to reiterate something John touched upon, for those people who have friends, family, friends of friends, if someone gets this diagnosis, please go to PanCan, to the organization, and look for pancreatic cancer doctors, because there's some wonderful doctors, oncologists out there who know a lot about various cancers, but they don't all know about pancreatic cancer. They don't know always to check for certain things. It's always essential to get a second opinion. Go to your doctor, the one you're familiar with, and if you don't like the diagnosis, if you don't think that the person is up for it, please contact PanCan. They will give you a roster of doctors that you can connect to. And
yeah, it's crazy, the myths. There's a lot of myths out there about it too, because I remember interacting with one of the nurses during the process. She was like, oh, pancreatic cancer treatment hasn't changed in 45 years. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I go, even I know that, you know, having gone to the PanCan, it's like there's so much, and he's about to start an experimental thing that we push for, whatever. So it's sort of like, you have to be your own advocate, and you have to, surround yourself with advocates.
I'm going to segue us one more time, only because again, I'm a natural clock watcher, and I want to make sure that we have time to talk about.
You're like an AD, dude.
I'm like an AD. I know.
I'm impressed. Yeah.
I know. I should.
Go for John. Go for John.
Yeah.
John was worried that he would not, the co-host thing was going to be
I'll do
difficult.
What I'd like to do is talk a bit about how you can help us.
Yes.
What we do. Yeah. How you can get involved, and what it is that brings us together in an active way to try and raise money and awareness. So I'm
John, you go first.
No. I would like you guys to go first.
No.
I'm a host. My job is to tee it up for the guests. I know my job.
So what you can do, certainly you can contribute to, that's the first thing you can do, is you can contribute to PanCan. They have an event around the country. I believe last year there were 65 cities involved. 60 cities involved. It's called Purple Stride, and they have it in April
I'm gonna throw this graphic up for you.
Good.
So.
There it is. April the
Yes,
20th.
we're a team. I'd like to start with
Thank you.
that. We are a team. This
So,
is
so if I may finish, John, so I can segue as
Go
you
ahead.
asked.
Go ahead.
Christ. What you can do is contribute to our team, certainly, but there are other teams. There's lots of teams who are collecting money for the Purple Stride event, and that Purple Stride event is to bring awareness about PanCan and to raise funds so that we can do more research. PanCan can fund more research for doctors so that we can raise this mortality rate from 12% to 100%, and that's what we're all hoping for.
You can also join our team, which we'd love to have you do. Join our team, become part of us. Walk with us if you're in LA, walk in any city.
I was going to say, if you could explain what Purple Stride on April 27th actually is for people as
Party.
well.
It's a
It's a party? Okay.
It's this party, and then we do a 3-mile walk. Here in Los Angeles, we'll walk
by the beach.
By the beach, yeah.
Wonderful.
We'll leave from the Santa Monica
Great.
Pier, and we'll do a nice walk, and it's a blast. And it's a lot
Thousands
of
of
people, that
people all dressed in purple, celebrating the accomplishments of PanCan. There's
That's
nothing. It is a block party for us
That's
to
right.
celebrate what we've achieved.
That's right. And the people that you meet, the people you talk to, they make you feel like you're really changing the world, and you are. If you can't contribute, you can still walk. If you can't contribute, you can tell other people about it. You can socialize with us. You can follow us on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called now, and or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and tell other people about it. That's really important. Just get the word out.
And can I crack my knuckles one more time? I'm gonna assume another role here.
Go.
In addition to supporting us by being a donor to our team, when Kitty says you can join our team, that means you would be somebody who raises money yourself. And what we want to do, and we're still working this out, is if you get to certain levels of having raised a certain amount of money, we will lavish you with affection. The nature of how that affection manifests itself, we're still figuring that out. But know that if you were to generate X, some affection. Y, wow, a lot of affection. Z, motherfucking shitload of affection.
So somewhere between red shirt and captain, there's a range of affection.
A range of affection, yes.
Yeah.
So some of that affection becomes memorabilia. Some of that affection becomes experiences that you could have with us. For instance, maybe we'll all go bowling together. We're still working this out. I don't bowl myself. I will sit in the back and drink a martini and critique you bowling. But what we're trying to figure out.
I don't freaking roll.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. What we are trying to figure out is ways to encourage people to become part of a family of fundraisers. And I think that's one of the things that you guys here at the
federation.
A federation.
Oh, union,
Excellent. Bringing it back
federation.
to track.
That's why
Absolutely.
he's
Not
a showrunner.
not a dominion. Not a dominion.
No.
A federation. Yeah.
From my personal point of view, a lot of what it is that I think brings Star Trek fans and friends and celebrities together is a mutual commitment to recognizing that it is a collective enterprise.
That's right.
And although this is one particular,
You said enterprise.
I'm allowed to say that. We're not on strike
You
anymore.
need the button.
Do everybody drink?
Yeah, we are looking
Right.
for ways to break down certain barriers. I really want to keep trying to communicate. I'm also doing this with the work I do with Hollywood Food Coalition. I want to keep suggesting that it is possible for us to work together to fulfill the Star Trek ethos. And that one of the manifestations and possibilities is help us raise awareness and funding for PanCan. And we will really try and look for ways to kind of work with you as peers and colleagues.
We're going to do it again this year with John. On the Star Trek cruise last year, there was a breakfast for PanCan, and there was like 60 people, 45 of whom I would guess had been affected personally by pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
It's the second fastest growing cancer in the United States. It's really important that we fix this.
Everyone I told about Manny, when Manny finally shared, everyone I told had a mother or a relative or a brother, who had suffered it and been through it.
Yep.
So, Juan Carlos, I'll let you speak because I want to add something, but I don't want to cut you out if you have anything you want to say besides.
No, that was it. That was it.
So in addition to contributing, I mean, this is all about money, and God knows my character on Star Trek was interested in money.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
But money aside, there are other things you can do. You can spread the word about the efficacy of this organization, and more importantly, if you hear of someone who has been diagnosed, please ask them to contact PanCan, because they offer a range of free services that will be very helpful. And one of the things we've touched upon, Kitty is the example of this, and John and Juan Carlos have already mentioned this, but it is not a death sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
It is not a death sentence. Yep. There are ways to do this, and the best way to fight it, the best way, is to detect early, is to have early detection. And if your sugar levels rise, as Juan Carlos was talking about, certainly if you turn yellow, unfortunately with pancreatic cancer, the symptoms show up for the doctors late in the disease, and by the time that your symptoms show up, you're pretty far along on the pathway. So it's really important, if your family has a history of pancreatic cancer in it, even if it's other cancers, please have a good oncologist check to see if you have any early stages that they can detect,
or
because
genetic,
right?
Get genetic testing. 10% of the people with pancreatic cancer have a genetic connection to it.
So if you can find those markers early on, you can defeat it before it grabs hold of you.
We have two friends who had prophylactic Whipple surgeries. They had non-cancerous tumors that were going to become cancerous, and they will likely never get it because they had these Whipples. It's a big thing to do, but it saved their lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of them is my best friend's brother.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. So everyone, you can go to, I just had it up. Let me put it up again. purplestride.org/Team Trek if you want more information, if you want to join their team. But it'll take you all over to a lot of different information if you go to this
and
link.
If you can't figure out which one of us to contribute to on our team, just close your eyes and pick one.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't say pick me.
Think of who is going to lavish you with the most affection. Who amongst us seems like the most affectionate? Contribute to that person.
Oh my God! Then Frakes gets all the money.
No, not Frakes, not Frakes. Frakes is way down on the affection emanating.
I love it. I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit, and we're going to get a couple of more fun questions in, maybe hopefully some from the audience out there. But I do have one that is actually a video question. John is familiar with this, having been on a live stream of ours before. We have a tradition where we have a previous guest ask a question to a future guest. They have no idea who that's going to be. So you have to just ask a question that you would like answered by any potential guest. And I have one from one of our past, most recent events that we had in December. So I'm going to play this question for you first. And then when we get some answers, then I'm going to ask you all for some questions as well for the next person. So let's listen in for this question.
I'll do one.
Yeah.
I ask this people all the time, which is, what is the movie or TV show that changed your life?
Well, that's relatively easy. And by the way, I also did Stargate.
Oh, we know.
Certainly, Star Trek changed my life. But referring back to something I said earlier, the production in high school of Hamlet changed my life.
That makes perfect sense.
I immediately took that to mean what, as a viewer, not as a participant.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Maybe that's because I'm semi-retired now. I don't know.
I think it's
I'm
open
an
to
egotist, so I went
interpretation.
immediately to myself.
Yeah.
How about you, JC?
The Wild Wild West,
Ooh.
which was on UHF. It was on in the afternoon with Star Trek, right? So Manny got into Star Trek first, and then because I was younger, and then he's like, "You got to watch the show." And I loved Trek, but then after Trek was Wild Wild West, which I loved more. Just something about the mixture of James Bond and the West, and the craziness of the stories and the little wildness of the show was very influential early on. I later got Manny into Next Gen because he was like, they can't make another Trek show. He was against it. So I was like, you got to watch Next Gen. It's awesome. And then he got into it. And then before that, I would say the opening credits and the movie, Superman, the movie, right? Going into that theater and sitting in those opening credits, that was a life changer for me. And that movie still, to me, is the best superhero movie. And then later in life, The Pretender, which was the first show I ever staffed on in 1996, that show changed my life because it was my graduate school. And again, we were talking about the system and showrunners. I had showrunners on that show who let me do it all and taught me all of it, right? And I was doing everything from pre-production to post from the minute I started and learning the ropes. And 4 seasons of 22 episode seasons, and I learned everything I really needed to learn. I'm still learning, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that changed my life.
I love it.
Kitty,
John?
So when I was a kid, I know Casablanca. I must have seen that movie 500 times. And if my dad and I watched it together, when they sang the Marseillaise, we would both stand up, put our hands over the heart. And sing
That's great.
At my dad's memorial, Armin, my dad spoke very bad French.
He didn't speak French. He pretended to speak French.
Absolutely true. And Armin passed out the lyrics and got everybody to sing. And he said, and if you sing badly and mispronounce the words, that's perfect because that's the way Dawn did it. So, but that movie made me think about what it was to do movies that had a political ethic. And I think that was really important to me. And and I think maybe that was what made me want to not just be a stage actor, because really all I wanted in my life was to be a stage actor. Like John Billingsley, we figured out that wasn't a good way to make a living. But that movie made me think, oh yeah, that's it. And then I became completely entrenched in all things Hitchcock. By the time I got to college, I would go to every Hitchcock festival at all the weird little theaters that have them. Me. Yeah.
Love it.
I was going to say literally a movie about an activist, Casablanca, right? Not just Victor, but
a reluctant activist.
Rick. Exactly. Yeah. Rick is really the one who's like, I stick my neck out for nobody. And then by the end of the movie, he's sticking his neck out. I mean, it's just brilliant.
Was the beginning
I have a prurient answer and a serious answer. The serious answer is It's a Wonderful Life, which I still, like Casablanca. I think that movie is one of the most powerful messages of any film ever made, that it is about what you do not know, what you cannot see, but in your kindness you change the world. And I can't watch even a frame of that movie without bursting into tears. The prurient answer is Petticoat Junction, which when I watched it as a child, the idea that Billy Joe, Bobby Joe, and Betty Joe were not wearing any clothes at the top was like, why do they always cut there? Why do they always cut there? But I was 9. And then Steve the Crop Duster descends. For those of you, I'll get Petticoat Junction. Steve the crop duster, he crash lands and he proceeds to sleep his way through all the sisters before eventually marrying Betty Joe. It is clearly suggested that he is sleeping with all the sisters, and I thought this show was well ahead of its time. I've never been able to find anybody else who appreciates Petticoat Junction the way I do. I also think I should play Uncle Joe in an eventual revival.
Okay.
But as a
cool.
I love it. So I would love to hear a question from you all for whoever is appearing next at the Companion.
Sure, I'll give you one.
Okay.
To that future guest, what inspired you to do what you do?
I like it.
You recorded, and I have one.
Oh yeah, we're recording.
If you could go back in time and start your life over, what specific moment would you want to be transported into to start again?
Wow.
Ooh.
I will ask a very pedestrian question, but I think it's a pretty good one, which is, what teacher changed your life?
Yeah.
I always like that one.
My mom was a teacher for 30 years, and a lot of them changed my life. So that would be my question.
Same. Both my parents were teachers for a very long time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Kitty,
That's great.
Okay. Now, you guys were all so good that I... oh, God. If you could go any place in the world right now, where would you go?
I love it. Thank you for those. Those are all wonderful. I'm going to throw one question up from the audience. So we actually had an audience Q&A because we are coming to the end of our time here. I do also want to tell you that there are so many comments coming through about people's connections, their stories, people they knew or know, and people that are dealing with pancreatic cancer. So at some point, if you go look at all of these live comments, they're wonderful, all these stories. It's just really nice to see everybody coming together in the comments and sharing those experiences with
Could
each
I
other.
take 1 minute just quickly, Rebecca, before
Mhm.
you, because I want to give you plaudits. Rebecca spent a lot of time trying to figure out questions that have never been asked before, and we didn't really get to this.
Yeah.
But here are the questions that she would have asked if we
Okay.
had time. Favorite book you've read recently? Favorite film show from the past year? Do you have a hidden talent? What's something you're terrible at? When do you know you can trust someone? When was a time you were really embarrassed? In the past year, what moments have been your favorite and least favorite? Have you ever been saved by anyone? Not in a religious sense. Do you have a word or phrase you tend to overuse? Name something that one of the other people here is good at. What's the most delicious meal you've ever eaten? Have you ever fallen asleep during something important? These are the questions that Rebecca did not get to ask. I want to bow in your direction.
No,
Wow.
of course. I always
great.
love to over prepare, so I'm more than happy to have questions that don't actually get to get asked. I would rather do that than run out of.
I wanted to make sure your
content.
work was honored.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, John.
Amazing.
I'm going to throw up this one question. But definitely, if you have
You're gonna
time,
throw
go
up?
check out these. Hopefully not.
When was
Hopefully
the
not.
last time you throw up, and
When
who
was
did you
the
throw up?
last-
I have to go play poker after this, but I'll check them out when I get home.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wonderful. I definitely do. So this one question by Do Woo is, what is this is just a fun one. What is the strangest thing anyone has ever asked you to autograph?
John, don't answer that.
I'm sure a belly. I'm sure, I will say that there's a woman named Lady Nighthawk who asked for a kiss, and this was early on, and I thought, oh, sure, a kiss. And she bent me over the table and nearly sucked the tongue out of my mouth, which was not an autograph, but was a memorable moment in my
I guess so.
autograph signing career. She was probably 80 years old. Spry,
Oh,
but yes.
spry.
I imagine a breast.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
The
That
top
would be
I
part of
haven't
the
had
breast.
any of those because I'm just a writer. Nobody ever wants my autograph, but
I do.
I do on
will
my
say-
paycheck. I do.
the
page.
warm-hearted version of this story is the cast of 911 is really great, and I had a friend in Florida whose son is a first responder in Boynton Beach, and he asked for a poster sign, and those guys signed it, and so it was the whole first responder team signed a poster, and I sent it to him, and it's probably up at the firehouse now. So
That's awesome.
it was nice.
Go first
Yeah.
responders. I am a former first
Yep.
responder, so
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
My picture is still
sure.
at my pediatrist's office, which I appreciate.
He's a later responder, not
The
first
only person who
responder,
ever asked for an
podiatrist.
autograph that actually put it on the wall, as far as I know.
Wow.
Oh, I can tell you that the strangest thing I have asked for an autograph on, from a fan's point of view, is an inflatable beach ball that I had Alan Rickman sign after Private Lives in New York City. So
Oh,
I am one of those people that asks for weird things to be
Wow.
autographed.
Did you have it blown up, or
It was blown up, yeah, and I handed it to him, and he did that Alan Rickman, eyebrow raise, like,
Did
this
you
is a
carry
first.
this?
Did he
inflatable
say-
beach ball into the
Did
production?
he say? Did he say
Not
it's so
inflated.
nice to make your acquaintance,
No, he just said, this
He
is
said
a
it was never
first.
or did he
Or-
just yell, "Attention, police! Attention, police!" Sorry.
Wait, I have to tell you that we have some autographs that are pretty swell, but Armin was at an event right after the
Riots in Los
riots,
Angeles.
the Rodney King riots,
Mm.
and there was one of the guys who pulled the guy that got so beat up at the corner of Normandy, and he pulled him
Reginald
back
Denny. Yeah.
in the Reginald Denny. Thank you. And Armin said, I don't know why anybody wants my autograph. I want yours. And so on the napkin of the
No, it's not napkins. It's more
a placemat thing.
placemat.
Yeah, placemat thing.
Okay.
We have his autograph, which is framed and sits in our.
and I don't collect autographs. But I said to him, I don't collect autographs, but your autograph I want.
I do on baseballs. I have to admit that. Yeah.
Hey, I love it.
I'm still trying to get the courage up to ask Frakes for his.
It'll cost you.
Frakes has signed both of my breasts, and now I can't shower.
Well, thank you so much. As always, the time has flown by. It always does. These hours just feel like they're 15 minutes by the end of it.
Yeah.
I would like to thank my guests today, Armin Shimerman, Kitty Swink, and Juan Carlos Coto. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
I will
Thank you so much.
again send everybody your way that I can. We have links going in the comments and on our pages for your. I think they're all directing kind of toward the Team Trek page, but and also if anybody is near one of the walks, I know I was checking that page and I think Atlanta.
Everyone is near a walk. There are 60
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah.
Everybody is near a walk.
Yeah.
So come out on April 27th and have a party and a walk, right? So
Good. And look for what we have coming up because we're planning some cool stuff with the people who join the team.
I love it.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Do we respond to the people who made comments after we've signed off here? How do we do that?
If you go onto YouTube and read the comments, you should be able to reply to them. So
Great.
yeah. And you can at least click on their names. You could see a lot there's just so many. I could not possibly read them all to you right now, but that's wonderful. It's a wonderful problem to have. It's really nice to see it in the comments. So thank you, Armin, Kitty, and Juan Carlos. It was so nice to meet
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for being here. And
Thanks,
I will let you
Am I
go
staying on as co-moderator to evaluate
for
the
one
performance?
minute, for one moment. You're staying on.
Fabulous.
But I will say goodbye to the other three.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Have a
Bye.
wonderful
So
day.
long, guys. Thank you.
Guys.
Have a good one.
John, thank you so much as well for being my co-host today. Thanks for you actually pulled that co-host duty you did pretty well with it.
Oh, well,
kept me on track. So it's
every actor in the world has to have an eye on the clock.
Of course.
I got to tell you, you only have so much time for every scene. So
For sure. I wanted to keep you here because I did also want to talk about, as part of a lot of upcoming events that we have, you have a very big upcoming event just next weekend. So could you tell us a little bit about Trek Talks?
yes, and I probably, for many of you who are listening, you've heard this before, but on January 13th, we have an 8-hour Jerry Lewis-esque digital telethon to raise money for the Hollywood Food Coalition, which is the organization I've been very actively involved in helping to support for the last 7 years. It's 8 hours of Star Trek-centric programming, panels, interviews, discussions, small interstitial films, musical interludes, with all sorts of guests. We have a 1-hour-long Picard Season 3 retrospective with Jonathan Frakes, Terry Metalis, Todd Stashwick, Jerry Ryan, a raft of others. We've got fabulous, we've got a fabulous Voyager-centric panel with most of the boys from Voyager talking about the episode Tuvix. We've got STEM scientists. We've got an appreciation of Nichelle Nichols' legacy with some of the most creative and interesting African-American behind the scenes and in front of the camera people associated with Star Trek Legacy. We've got a half-hour-long interview with Nana Visitor. We've got a ton of other fabulous guests. And the Hollywood Food Coalition, organization very dear to my heart, hofoco.org, does marvelous work helping to bring food and sustenance, a variety of different kinds, to people all through the Southland. Most notably, in my opinion, we share about 3 million pounds of food a year, not only with our home kitchen, from whence emerges a nightly meal to all comers, but 150 other not-for-profits whose meal programs we augment and buttress.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much for telling us all about all of your endeavors. You have so many. I'm so impressed with all of it, John. I threw this up so people can go to trektalks.net. They can, the other thing is our companion, YouTube, is also going to be simulcasting your event. So you can go to any of those YouTube channels, or if you want to, you can watch through the companion. We are not producing it or anything. We just are boosting the signal for you. So we're very happy to be able to do that for you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We've raised about $250,000 over the last couple of years. So, the idea is we do this every year, and it's, not insignificant portion of our annual budget. So please, if you can't donate, which of course I completely understand, having been broke for 20 years of my life, share the story, spread the word. A lot of what we want to do is try and get people who are still not really cognizant that this is happening tuned in so they can come and join. So
absolutely. And I think that goes for PanCan, HofoCo, all these different things. It feels to me, I hear a lot of times people ask, like, what can I do? I'm broke. I don't have money. I don't know where to start. sharing,
Yeah.
just spreading the word, I think is a
You
great
had
thing.
one. You had one question. I think I addressed this, and forgive me. I know you've got time constraints, so please
Oh, no, we're good.
shut me up at any time. But I have no poker game to go to, so I can gab for a smidge more. One thing that I started doing years and years and years ago was calling up pals, and I may have mentioned this in the last conversation we had, and saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in your hood tomorrow. Can I stop by and pick up a bag of groceries?"
Mhm.
And made a day of going around to all my pals and picking up groceries. Got to see my pals, which was always fun, and dropped off a car full of groceries to a food bank. Did it again a month later and said, "Would you be interested in maybe enlisting one other guy, one other pal of yours to do the same thing?" Doubled the capacity, made it a 2-day event. You can keep growing that kind of grassroots effort without having to join another organization, without having to spend money. It's networking, using your friends and their friends and the friends of their friends to grow a grassroots effort. And you can rescue food or toys or books or clothing. I guarantee you there are churches and shelters and organizations that would love those donations. And there's a lot of stuff just sitting around in people's closets. So, that's a grassroots thing you can do that doesn't require a buck.
Absolutely.
And you get to see your pals and meet new friends, which is,
It's a win-win.
is a win-win.
Thank you for that, John, and thank you so much for agreeing to be my co-host for this event.
Absolutely.
It was a blast as always. I will let you go now before I do my whole spiel to end this live stream. But thanks so much, John. We're looking forward to seeing everything next weekend. Especially the Picard season 3, especially exciting for me. So we'll let you go. Have a wonderful day, and thank you so much.
Much obliged.
For everyone else that's still out there, we have a lot coming up on our events calendar. On January 27th, we have part 3 of Amanda Tapping's Embracing Mental Health as a Fandom. I'm bringing my co-fries from 3 Fry Short with me this time, and we can't wait. This is a ticketed event, so make sure you've got yours. If you're a member of the Companion, you can use your code to redeem your ticket for free. If you don't have an email or you deleted the email with the code, I will be sending it out again soon. If you're not a Companion member, you can get your ticket for $20. Proceeds go to NAMI, Kids Help Phone, and Mind. Or you can go ahead and join the Companion and redeem one of those, redeem a ticket for free. Basically 2 live stream tickets, and that's your Companion membership. We've got a lot more in the works to announce very soon. We've got some exciting IRL in real life experiences coming up, including Follow the Yellow Gate Road in March. You can find information about all of this and more over at www.thecompanion.app. Thank you again so much for joining us today. Please consider donating, getting involved, spreading the word, everything that John was just telling you about, things that you can do. Every effort helps. I'll throw this graphic up one more time again. Go to www.purplestride.org/Team Trek if you want to participate in one of the walks. The walk is April 27th is the date. So many cities that you can look up and find a walk near you. If you would like to join our social hour, please head over to go.thecompanion.app/getsocial. I will throw that up on the screen here in just a minute. Be patient getting let in. It's going to take me a bit to get settled over there, but we will let you in. And for everyone else, thank you so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you again very soon.